Welcome to the show, I guess formerly known as the XFL Markcast.
We are the artist formerly known as Prince, and yes, we are the podcast formerly known as the XFL Markcast. We are now the Markcast. The website has been updated. You can go to themarkcast.com. All the social medias have been updated. It's at @the_Markcast. I thought that was good. And yeah, it's been a process this week. Like the podcast artwork is still working. So like Paul and I were just talking, his Apple podcast shows it updated. Mine doesn't. We're doing it.
And Reed is very OCD, so it's bothering him quite a bit that it's not updated on his, but updated on mine. So yeah, I'm hoping that Apple gets their act together, and I'm going to check Spotify. Maybe do you have Spotify or no?
If it's on Spreaker.com, it's on all of them. I mean, I've looked at most everything, but yeah, listener Max was quick to point out. He's like, it didn't update on Apple. I'm like, I can't call Tim Apple and tell him what to do. Okay, I can't do that. So, but yeah, so we are the Markcast. We are covering all your what did we say? CFL, XFL, and alt football stuff. You wrote a very good tagline for us.
And then of course someone's like, well, this is not alternative football, and I'm like, okay, we're separating. I felt like the description was separating the CFL from the XFL and then alternative football. That was the point of what I did and describe it. I'm saying alternative football is not the CFL. We're not, come on. We're being respectful.
We're trying. It's one of those yeah.
I feel like we explain ourselves every week in what our train of thought is, because people just take things out of context, and Reed is the king of context. So, put it all together.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Markcast is there. Like I said, and I did want to plug this at the top. Please, we're building the subscribers. We're working towards the 2,500 giveaway. We've added. We're at like 1,250 something now. We have a lot of tidbits in the show later. We have great draft coverage coming up with Connor O'Neill from the CF Perspective podcast. Derek Taylor is coming on from the Cage, Sports Cage, and the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Thank God I didn't say Dave. I put Dave in the notes. Derek Taylor. But I have a lot of tidbits later in the show. XFL stuff, mergery stuff. We got some Redbirdy stuff. So if you like all the work, even our listeners, Max and others that are helping me to put together this best show, please subscribe. You can go to themarkcast.com/review. All the links still work. All the XFL show links still work, but you can go to themarkcast.com. But please subscribe. If you like all this, we tons of work today, and we're going to have you CFL draft coverage. We're going to have you all the different stuff going on. So,
yes, please.
I tweeted the poll. Do you think that I picked the right team for last week? What do you think the results were? I have my Edmonton hat. It's a nice hat. I was showing Paul. I'm going to move the mic to watch on YouTube. This is the funniest hat in the world.
Okay. He's pointing at his hat for those who are listening. It's like
it's like an emblem on the hat. It's like a CFL emblem. Like I thought it was like a patch. It's like you can scratch it. It's very odd. It's a very nice hat.
Can you sniff it after you scratch it?
Possibly. Anyway, I posted the poll. I said, did I pick the right team with the Edmonton? 42% said yes, and 57.9% said no. So definitely a divisive decision here. I'm sure not the last of many divisive decisions that we will have on the Markcast, but there we go.
Right. Okay. So we got these people that are coming in with their hat giveaways.
We have our hat giveaway. I asked last week. I have my extra. We have our extra XFL. This is like vintage now because we're not even the XFL Markcast anymore. So this is like vintage merch. I did. If you left us a review last week, you were entered into the drawing. We only had 3. Can you believe that? A free chance. Take you a minute of your time to get a free hat mailed to me from me. This is crazy. It's in the box, ready to go. William, thank you for your review. Coheed, welcome. Thank you for your review. And then Kyle, welcome for your review. I put them into a randomizer. Kyle is Zingabadungadubdum is the last name. I can't say it. Zenklu, whatever. Kyle, Kyle's getting the hat. So DM me, give me an address. It's in the box. So this could have been your hat. Anyone else listening to this, if you had left us a review, but Kyle did. And so that is what we are doing.
So are we going to open this package now, or are we going to wait till the end?
We're going to tease it. Yes, this is most anticipated.
I thought you were going to get a helmet, by the way. That doesn't look like there's a helmet.
I was going to, first off, I don't think a game ball nor a helmet is fitting in this box. If you're listening on audio, God, please watch the YouTube today. This is going to be fun. Later in the show, we're going to open our Brian Woods Spring League merch box. Longtime listeners know Brian promised us merch last year. It never came. So this is supposedly the Jousters merch. Paul, I hope there's 2 articles of clothing in here. I don't know how heavy this feels. Would you be distraught if there's not 2 articles of clothing in this box?
Given the situation, I would not be distraught. I would be kind of like, okay.
Okay. I'm just telling you right now. I have felt this many times in my hand this week to check. I don't know if there's 2 articles of clothing in here. I hope there is.
We'll see.
We're going to open this at the end of the show. I will tell you guys, real talk. We were going to do a whole Spring League episode today. Spring League kicks off tonight as we record this. Last night as the episode airs, and then there's more games on Saturday. We had, as any media outlet would do, submitted our media request to Brian through his PR people. And I said, Brian, here's our list of people. About a week and a half ago, I sent this in. Would love to find some time. Here's our availability, as you would with media availability. Paul works in the media. We're like, this is a normal thing. Back and forth. And then on Tuesday, they said that they didn't have time. I don't care that they are not coming on our podcast, because I get that. They're on Fox broadcasts. You don't need to tell me, Reed, you're the Markcast. They don't. I get that. They are not on anything. I mean, I have not seen any articles about the Spring League. I have not seen any commercials. I've not seen it. I have not. This is like the deadest launch of anything that I've ever heard. And Paul and I went on Twitter. I said, we gave Fan Control Football a lot of grief. At least they promoted their product. Paul, what do you think about that before we kind of move into the meat of the show?
I guess it's just, it seems that every one of these leagues lacks something.
Yep.
And in terms of the Spring League, they lack the ability to promote themselves and realize what's really important. The best type of advertising is word of mouth advertising. It literally would have taken someone 15 minutes to come on here and talk about what they're getting ready for in the Spring League, and you couldn't afford that. I mean, not saying that you're going to get like millions of views now that we're talking about on the Markcast, but it's getting the word out nonetheless to people that might be willing to check you out that don't even know you're launching, last night. I guess I don't understand the philosophy there.
No, and like I said, you don't need to tell me that we're not a big platform. I understand that, but I'm saying they're not on anything. I mean, at least Fan Control Football was on like Sports Center and they were on ESPN. Spring League's not on anything. I mean, they tweeted last night. They go, "Hey, empty locker rooms, but you wouldn't, kickoffs tomorrow, calm before the storm." I said, I wouldn't know that at all.
What storm?
Except for the roster releases that they had this week, the tweeted just like text images, there hasn't been anything. I mean, at least last year when they were in San Antonio, they had that Kate or whatever her name was doing she did videos every week and they had player spotlight. I mean, even if you're not going to have the players, like Fan Control Football, let the players be accessible, like we could call them and schedule stuff.
Right.
Even if you want us to go through the league, you got to put some player stuff out there. I mean, you got XFL guys, you have CFL guys, you have a lot of you have Luis Perez. I mean, you have these big names coming in, and unless I'm reading in the roster and I see Luis Perez as the second name on the QB depth chart, I don't know that this is happening this week. So it was going to be the Jousters ride, you and I on the Jousters logo. I had the whole episode ready to go. So we will open this later, but we're going to do a deep dive on CFL draft coverage. So
insane.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There's no other way to go about it. So moving on.
Yeah. And then last plug before we go, I'm going to be on the Argos Fancast. I want to try to get them to come on, and I'm
an Argos fan. What the
because you are working tonight and you're making good money with your Mellow Man Live YouTube show. So I'm trying to plug you here. I'm trying to compliment. Paul is working tonight, so I'm going to go on the Argos Fancast. He reached out. I want to get them to come on and do a MLSE deep dive with us. So we're going to work on that. So I will tweet that when that episode comes out, but thank them for coming on that. And
by the way, I want to compliment you. That's the first time you nailed MLSE.
I really thought about it.
You did think about it? Oh, it didn't look like you thought about it. So kudos to you. That's all.
Yeah, I really thought about it. So we plugged Derek Taylor and Connor coming on, and we are good to go. I have this week, I got my new shipment. I got 4 boxes. Don't tell Dorothy. I got 4 boxes of Zoa. I now have the super berry, so I get to try this one. I got 2 super berries, and then I got 2 original sugar free. So we're going to try this. This is a new flavor. I'm working on our sponsorship as we speak.
Yeah, this is all like a long game, folks. It's playing chess, not checkers, as we say on Wheelhouse. I'm waiting to see what he thinks of the aftertaste.
Oh, it's delightful. That's good, man. This is good. I tell you, but you did have the sugar free. Yeah, this is really good. I like this.
What I did.
Oh, the smell though was terrible. I know what you're saying. Oh, it is weird.
Now you see it.
Oh, I don't taste it, but it does. It smells like dog. It totally does.
Yeah, I told you.
That's crazy. That's
what I started doing when I was finishing drinking it. I would sometimes I breathe when I'm weird. I breathe when I drink, so I just stopped breathing when I drank it, and it went down fine after that. But the smell is terrible. It has a terrible, terrible smell. I don't know if that's the way the chemicals are reacting with the can. Danny, Rock, you need to look at that.
This is what it smells like. It tastes wonderful. This is what it smells like. This is, if you want to know right now, go to your medicine cabinet. If you want to know what the Superberry Zero Sugar smells like, I take a lot of fish oil. It's good for your heart. It's good for like your whatever. Stick your nose in your bottle of fish oil and smell those capsules in there. That is what that smells like. It smells like fish oil capsules.
Or just wet your dog down.
Well, but
your dirty dog down, and it's same thing. Same thing.
Anyway, so there we go. Thank you for our preface. The Markcast, we're moving on.
CFL tweeting the wrong draft date for the CFL Draft. Yikes!
Did you see this?
I didn't see this, but this is hilarious.
Friend of the show, CFL Reddit, Braden, he goes, the tweet was, and I think we're going to have to censor ourselves. It goes, tell me your employees don't give an S about the draft without telling me your employees don't give an S about the draft. And it was the CFL, the official Twitter account. It goes, the CFL draft tomorrow night at 7 p.m. But it was the day of the draft. So we'll talk here in a minute about the subpar ratings for the draft. And one of our listeners, McG Tots or whatever on Twitter, was like, well, you need to look at the Wednesday draft numbers because they didn't promote the Tuesday draft. You need to look at the Wednesday numbers. No, it's a joke. I mean, he was being facetious, but not a really good look to have 3 hours before the draft, have your official social media tweet be, watch tomorrow.
Don't watch tonight. Just watch tomorrow. You'll be okay.
I watched a lot of the draft. I watched Connor. We'll have later on in the show see a perspective. I watched a lot of his live stream. I watched a lot of the 3 Down Nation guys live stream. I thought that they did a superb job. I mean that. It didn't shock me. The ratings came out. The CFL draft was down 22% from last year. Had 57,000 viewers. Last year was like 73,000. It didn't surprise me when the CFL draft live stream had like 100 concurrent streamers, right? I mean, and that's no like dig on them because I thought the content was superb, but I was like, God, Lord, I wish you guys had more people watching this because they had Rod Peterson on, they had all these players on, they had Dunk and Hodge and the guy that blocked us all on Twitter, JC, but like they really did a good job. I mean, I felt like all the CFL guys across the board like killed it with draft coverage, and it just seemed like nobody cared. We'll get into obviously that all later too.
Of course. And you said no MGK.
I thought, well, Machine Gun Kelly was in the NFL draft. They had 12 million viewers on draft night 1. Do you think if Machine Gun Kelly would have done like a Zoom stream concert that they would have got more or less viewers?
Less viewers.
Paul hates Machine Gun Kelly.
Let me talk about that too. You sent me the clip off your football show.
Good Morning Football.
Good Morning Football. And Nate Burleson, the Kung Lao hat wearing guy on there, who's also on Extra, said that MGK like killed Eminem on a song. It's like, bro, did you listen to the entire battle? Because I mean, that's what happens in a battle. You listen to all the songs and you make an assessment. And I'm sorry, he did not kill Eminem. Please go back and review. Nate Burleson, take the Kung Lao hat off. Sure. This is Mortal Kombat. Go back and review, please. Thank you.
I'm going to try to pull this up and play it. So I tweeted this about the CFL draft, and this got a little heated. So at the end of the Young Rock show on it was the season finale, they had this clip, and basically he got drafted. I'm going to try to play this. He got drafted to the CFL. Yeah, as we know, The Rock got drafted to the Stampeders. So I'm going to play the audio from this, and then we're going to talk about it.
Hello? Hello? Hey, we must be Dwayne Johnson. On behalf of the Calgary Stampeders, welcome to the Canadian Football League.
And it's like him in like a snowstorm. Like you can't even, it's like Hoth, right? Like he's like Luke on Hoth. Like you can't see anything. And so I tweeted, I said, what do you think got the CFL more exposure last night? That last 10 seconds on Young Rock that was seen by 2.36 million people just on TV. That doesn't include streaming at all, or the 57,000 people to watch the CFL draft. People were not happy about that.
Again, I feel like, they think their culture is being attacked, and we'll talk about that with
Derek. It was good.
Derek Taylor. Yeah, talking about that as well. We'll hear it from him coming up. And might there have been a subtle jab there from the writers of the Young Rock show? Brian Gewirtz, former WWE writer, I think is working on that as well. So was that a subtle jab? I don't know.
I do tinfoil hat. I do think it's weird that potentially next season of Young Rock is going to involve the CFL and the XFL is in talks, right? I mean, maybe they are the ultimate chess checkers. Like maybe they've thought this out like Rock 2 years ago. Well, I'm going to do this show. And could you imagine next year if Young Rock, if he's in the CFL and the XFL, CFL, like if that all happens?
I'm going to ask The Rock for lottery tickets. What should my lottery numbers be?
That's great. I'm just saying. I mean, but in all seriousness, like facetious, whatever aside, like 2.36 million people on TV that don't know about potentially don't know about the CFL, heard about the CFL on Tuesday night. At the same time, and the 57,000 people that are watching the CFL draft know about the CFL. So like, you can't, and I understand like, viewership and America's bigger and Canada. I get all that stuff. I'm just saying like exposure wise, that's a, 2 point whatever million more people that just saw about this, that didn't see about it on Monday night. So like, that is a good thing. I would think not all people online really thought that way.
So when you hear people like Arash Madani say, you guys aren't, the XFL team isn't bringing anything to the table. Reed's point is now all of a sudden all these people know about the Calgary Stampeders that might not have known about them before.
Yeah, and I mean, again, you can say okay, whatever in impressions versus actually click through and all these kind of things, but that brings a level of visibility that you just can't buy. I'm sorry, you can't, and that's a primetime NBC show across the demographics, in terms of age and stuff, and you can't buy that kind of stuff. We're gonna do big deep dive with the draft here coming up with Connor. I just had a note that Jake Burke, Jake Burke was number one to Hamilton, tight end. I thought it was cool that in the year that Kyle Pitts was the big tight end transcendent player in the NFL, going fourth, which is like one of the highest at tight end. I think that was the highest at tight ends ever gone. Connor points out, that Jake was the only number one tight end that's ever been taken. So I just thought that was cool. I think the games are evolving. 30 years ago, I don't think you would see a tight end go number 4 in the NFL at all. So I thought that was cool. I just put notes here. Did you watch any takeaways? We have our Seahawks thing with the CFL. Any other takeaways from the CFL players in the NFL, or do you want me to get into that?
No takeaways right now. Again, Connor talks about that somewhat. So, on the NFL draft note, I was surprised to see the Bears basically just, go for it. That was the big surprise. They just went for it. And hopefully, the interesting thing, like I was reading all the things they were talking about, Justin Fields, right? Yeah. basically that he has the photographic memory, and he's very like sharp. And this is a franchise quarterback the Chicago Bears have been looking for. I wouldn't even say Jim McMahon was the franchise quarterback that they won a Super Bowl with him. I understand that, but that was the defense that won that Super Bowl. It wasn't really Jim McMahon. So they've been looking for a franchise quarterback for as long as I've been alive. And this might be the kid. We'll see if that happens for him.
Yeah, I had one audio drop here I'll play from Farhan talking about some of the and then we have a note here coming up because one of the Canadian guys, Pierre, I cannot say the name, and I have the text here too small.
Pierre Olivier.
Lestage. Lestage. He went to the Seahawks, but I have a note here I'm going to try to time this out right. Let's see if this plays. This is Farhan talking about the CFL guys in the NFL draft.
Now, not only were 4 players selected, what's important to note is all 4 of these players were skill positions. Consider that in the previous 15 years, 19 Canadians had been selected, only 4 were non-linemen. And as much as we love our linemen, young Canadians who are looking to be inspired by the next generation of Canadians in the NFL want to see players touch the football. So this is the first time ever 3 Canadians were taken in the first 3 rounds, the first time ever 4 Canadians were taken in the first 4 rounds. Now, there were a couple of other Canadians that were possibilities of being selected.
There you go. So, it's cool. Seeing some of the guys come up so there were the 4 guys drafted and then 4 guys signed as undrafted free agents. So,
and I think the reason why you get those 4 guys drafted that high is look at the schools they're playing for. They're all Power 5 conferences in terms of Oregon in the Pac-12. I actually said the Pac-12 for once instead of the Pac-10. Minnesota in the Big 10 plus 18,000 other teams. And then you got Tennessee in the SEC and Oklahoma State in the Big 12, which is actually only 10. So, I mean, you get D1 Power 5 kids that come from Canada go to these schools. They're going to get more development. They're going to get better looks, and happy to see that some of those Canada kids are coming across here and playing the NFL. Let's see.
Yeah, one of the cool things just for us as Seahawks fans, the Seahawks, they signed offensive lineman Pierre prior to the end of the draft. Carroll personally called the 23-year-old during the pre-draft process and ensured them that they had legitimate interest. That it wasn't just scouts doing the work. And he signed Pierre said, it's the team that showed me the most interest. So I was definitely feeling a good vibe with them. The team is serious. When the head coach picks up the phone and calls a player, it's serious. You don't do that with any player. That was his agent. Pierre's agent said. So I just thought that was cool. We'll be checking in for the Seahawks. And what's interesting about this is the Seahawks desperately needed some protection for Russell Wilson. And so all the talk we had done last year, well, here you go. You got a Canadian guy coming in, superstar, and they're going to plug him in, and maybe that'll help out a little bit.
Hopefully, the Seahawks were known before they won the Super Bowl for finding these diamonds in the rough. And I'm hoping that Mr. Lestage, I'm going to say Lestage, maybe it's Lestage, I don't know. Hopefully he's one of those diamonds in the rough that actually helps contribute, protects Russell, and keeps Russell happy. I think that's the big thing the Seahawks are working on, is keeping Russell happy at this point.
That dog water taste is really building up. The Zoa is.
Told you.
It's really building up.
You thought I was hating.
So anyway, so Connor's going to come on here in a little bit. We're going to do all the other draft stuff. So I want to move into, I got some CFL this season news. We'll do all that. And then we've got some merger and XFL stuff, but we'll have definitely more, some standout players that Connor identified in the CFL draft coming up here in a little bit. What do you think about this? The Players Association, we talked with Derek about this as well.
The Players Association basically saying that the league has not made a firm decision on that August 5th deadline that we're hearing. Basically, between the lines, they're saying don't quit your day jobs just yet because you might need them for another month, maybe 2. I think that the Players Association feels like there's going to be a season no matter what, and I think that's key for the CFL to succeed. But I think they're just wait to see how this pandemic is handled here in Canada before walking away from whatever it is you're doing to make ends meet currently.
One note about this, and I don't want to air too much of, talk too much, whatever, but I do think it's pretty factual here. Matt Mango, friend of the show, was in the spring league last year. He got signed to the Alouettes as as one of the kickers this year. Matt is livid with all of this because here he could be in the spring league right now, even though he wouldn't be getting paid, still getting more exposure. And Matt has messaged me and he goes, I feel like I am at the peak of anything that I've ever worked towards, like right now. And I can't, because here he is, he signed to the CFL. It's too late to go to the spring league. And so it's really hard. And I feel for Matt and all these players, anyone with the CFL, these guys getting drafted, signed, Connor talks about, well, they're still signing players. Like, yeah, but could you imagine like, okay, I just signed to the BC Lions, but I don't know really if we're playing this year or like, we're pretending. It's such a confusing situation. I feel so bad for everybody, but yeah, Matt would be at the spring league right now, but he can't, because he's signed, and I don't know what the legalities are with like, okay, you're signed, you can't go do other things, but it's a big deal to him, and I'm sure he is not an isolated case of that, of someone that would want to be doing that right now instead to be playing.
Because we're talking about the pandemic here, and British Columbia's top doctor, Dr. Bonnie Henry, says it's likely we'll see the return of smaller distance outdoor events this summer. There's not likely to be big events of any sort, even though outdoors in the summer and early next year. Anyway, that's really also concerning when you realize that one of the CFL teams plays indoors.
Well, yeah, and this is
BC.
Well, this is great. So, and to follow this up, I liked having both of these stories back to back. So, despite Dr. Bonnie Hammer used to run USA Network, right? Bonnie Henry, doctor up there. Rob was talking about this on the show too. But the BC Lions are still moving ahead with everything. Their president, Rick Lasher, believes they can safely reduce their crowds.
Sure.
And he says they're going to open the roof and become an outdoor stadium. He goes, of course, that gets the far greater air circulating. It's a pretty big building. As there's a lot of space. But that's not like
Band-Aid.
BC doesn't like the BC Health District. Like if they don't care if you can open your roof to get in some more fans. It's really like, and I've talked with guys and we've had people on the show and I've listened to other shows where, a lot of the health departments up there aren't really interested in any return to play protocol of any kind right now. Cause they're like, our ICU, it's like our full, like, we don't care about the CFL of any kind. And they don't care about the BC Lions, but it is interesting where you have the leading, health professional saying, yeah, maybe hundreds of people for outdoor events. And then you have the Lions president saying, well, we're planning on moving ahead. And both of those things cannot happen at the same time. So no, I don't know what.
Let's let the doctors control this thing. I understand everybody wants to, get back to normal and play football and play sports, but the virus has its own plans.
Yeah. This is interesting. And I added this the other day, so I'm going to do my best. We're going to kind of plug through this. There's still talks with the federal government potentially giving the CFL some money this year. That the Winnipeg Member of Parliament, Jim Carr, has publicly confirmed the federal government and the CFL are still talks. The 69-year-old said there's a possible arrangement for this year. Conversations are ongoing and their relationships are good, and the line of communication is fluid. There's still a lot of variables out there. So they got denied the interest-free loan before. We feel like money needs to be coming from somewhere, whether it's the owners or whatever. They said that. Basically, even though the loan was denied last year and this year, a lot of these teams have still gotten, like in the US, we had like PPP loans to help cover like payroll and stuff. So a lot of these teams are still getting that, right? So they're getting like the Winnipeg Blue Bombers got $3.1 million and they got 2.9 from the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy. So he's saying, like, I think the idea is if you're going to deny this blanket loan, but then still be giving these like team individual ones, maybe you would be better off figuring out a way to fund the season. Like, and that's kind of where I'm reading from that. Do you get what I mean? Like, well, we're not going to give the CFL loan, but we're going to give all these teams money to plug in holes. Well, that kind of equals what that whole amount would be. So why aren't we? That's kind of my question where I got from that, if that makes sense.
I think if we're calling this the equivalent of like the PPP down here, some of those loans still have to be paid back. Some people still have they can't be forgiven for their PPP loans. I know there was a guy, a chiropractor in LA that kind of got dinged really hard for his because they did some overestimation. But I think that maybe that's what's going on, is that again, the money that was asked was interest-free. They were asking for an interest-free loan, and I don't think the Canadian government was willing to do the interest-free thing. But the PPP equivalent up there, maybe that's what's going on, and that way they pay some interest back on this money that's being loaned to them.
The article also just said that if the CFL really wants money above and beyond this, the kind of like the assistance that they're getting right now, they would really have to show their books and really show that they would be financially solvent for years to come. And so that's the issue too, where maybe the CFL wants some money, but they don't we don't want to show you our books. It's like, well, okay, we need to. It's kind of like the CFL-XFL thing. Like, you kind of can't just have everything that you want. And
in the egg, something's got to come first.
And so anyway, but I just thought that was interesting, and where like they're still getting money, but they're just not like, okay, we're band-aiding these things as opposed to like let's pitch this forward. So
let's get a solution. A 2-year delay has revealed some harsh truths about the CFL. It's not 2 years yet. We're almost there.
Yeah.
Mike Mitchell wrote this.
Yeah, I just wanted to plug this. Mark and XFL News Hub, they're launching CFL News Hub to cover a lot of the CFL stuff. Mike Mitchell had this great article that came out. A lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, flushed out more. The biggest thing for them, Paul, is this last bit here that I'm going to bold. And it's talking about, do you want to kind of go? That's my big takeaway from this Mike Mitchell article.
Well, I mean, we know that the NHL and the NBA and all these other leagues have these additional revenue streams. Like, people really wanted baseball, so they would get MLB TV. They would have NFL subscriptions that they could watch old games, and there's so much money already in the coffers for the NFL and the NHL and the NBA because of TV deals and whatnot. And the CFL, again, hasn't marketed well to build up a coffer to kind of support the teams. And that's the problem. I think that's the only problem. It's not part of the problem, like it says here. That is the problem, that they don't have this kind of coffer, this kind of like buffer where they could go, okay, we can afford to go 2 years and still be financially solvent, because we don't have that TV deal. I mean, we've talked about it numerous times before that we feel like they're getting raked over the coals.
Yeah, and Mike's big thing is just this shouldn't. Whether you want to defend or hate on the XFL or the CFL or anything else, this kind of problem should not exist for a league that's been in its present form of play since 1958, right? And we can only
1958. I thought it was 100 and some odd year league.
Yes, the current form of play. Yeah, I believe me, I had a good discussion with a fellow last night about that. So this is a side note. So they talk about the 108-year Grey Cup's been awarded for 108 years. Up until, I believe, 54, before that, you would have like amateur teams and kind of a mix of leagues competing for it. So the first all-pro Grey Cup was awarded in 1954. So again, you can't have the 108 years, but the Grey Cup in its current form with the current CFL and the current everything was from 1954, I believe, is when that's from Listener Max, but I believe that's from when the first one was awarded. So you want to get ticky-tacky about 0.3% ratings for the XFL in week 5. We're going to get ticky-tacky about the 45 years of your league that didn't play with the current form of play.
We're just returning energy, folks. We're just returning energy. So, I mean, and if you think that our energy is denigrating your league, I'm sorry to say it's really not, but we're just returning energy as Reed takes another drink of his Zoa.
I taste it now. I know what you're saying.
I'm sorry. You just plug your nose when you take a drink, and I'm telling you, it goes down a lot smoother. That's all I'm saying is just like we're just returning energy. So, I mean, if you feel like we're bashing the CFL, we're not. We want it to succeed. I wish that our Canadian counterparts wanted our XFL to succeed. It is what it is. So
I will have a conversation with look at the Rosh. I will have a conversation with any informed opinion that wants to have a conversation with me. I won't stand for this like bashing, like, well, this sucks. Like, I will have a conversation with anybody about anything. We have no skin in anything succeeding or not succeeding. We have no benefit of the CFL going under. So yes, I will have a conversation with anybody, but if you want to come at us, then yes, I think there are ways that both can go back and forth.
All right. With that being said, we're going to take a break. Talk to Derek Taylor coming out of this. Also Connor O'Neill. And we'll be breaking down the draft and then getting, of course, Derek's opinion on exactly what he thinks is going to happen and what he would like to see happen coming up after this. Derek Taylor, host of the Sports Cage, and is it color commentary? Play-by-play.
Yeah.
Saskatchewan Roughriders. Thanks for joining us. Can you first give Reed a hard time for his Edmonton affiliation here now?
Well, one, they don't have a nickname, so that's bad. Two, their final list wasn't the one I wanted. I wanted the Edmonton Endowed, because what American wouldn't come up? I get to play for a team called the Endowed. Hey, what team do you play for? The Endowed. They didn't go for it. Reed, that's total crap. They didn't go for it. Come on.
I know. Dave, friend of the show, Dave Campbell, beat you onto the show, Edmonton color analyst. And so I said, I got to throw my hat with Dave. And there's some XFL guys that are making their way to Edmonton. So we are excited about that.
Just between us, with what Edmonton did between free agency in the last couple of off seasons, Edmonton is going to be good this season. I don't know where I'll have them when my power rankings come out, when the season looks on the horizon, but Edmonton might contend to be first in the West in the regular season.
I like that.
They've done some really nice stuff. Oh,
Reed's already amped. Also, I listened to your show after the whole Arash thing, and I thought it was very. You guys kind of were the only outlet I thought that like kind of saw where we were coming from, and I've gone over that numerous times, and I've been like, I could have hit him with the Arena Football League and been boom, and that would have been the argument to win that thing. But I was like, great, somebody up there is finally kind of understanding like our viewpoint on things. So I do appreciate that.
I want to profess my undying love for Arash Madani, because he's fantastic. He's connected within the league, and he is not afraid to set things on fire. I love that about Arash. There are just some parts of his argument that you go, what's successful and what's a failure? If you want to say every American league that's not the NFL has failed, is the Arena League running from 1987 to 2019, 33 seasons? Is that really a failure? Sure, it's not in business, but for 33 years, here's another version of football outside of the NCAA, outside of the NFL, that made its way through in America. So to me, that's not a failure. Maybe I'm a big softie, but not everything is a failure just because it did die off at one point.
I totally agree with that. We've gone back and forth with a lot of the 3 down guys, and that it's like, well, does it exist right now? Then it's a failure. And you're like, well, I don't really know if that's the bar that I would set for anything. I mean, lots of things run their course, and for a variety of reasons. But just because something doesn't exist right now today does not necessarily mean it's a failure. So.
Was Friends the TV show a failure? No, it was on the air for like 11, 12 seasons, and then it had to go away.
Yeah, what a great example, right? Seinfeld. I'll watch 2 episodes of Seinfeld at some point today. That thing went off the air 22 years ago. I forget what it was, 98, 23 years ago. Yeah, but that's the narrative that we drive. That's it's just the NFL, and the NFL is a behemoth, and you can't really compete September to February when the Super Bowl happens. The people are insane about the draft. So many people outside the NFL make so much money just talking about the draft all year round. But there's not a reason why, when the NFL isn't playing football games, another league done properly can't prosper. The Arena League is gone, but if you went back and investigated it, I'm sure there are several inflection points where you went, if they'd done this better, they might still be around here in 2021, packing people into the Alaris Center in Fargo, North Dakota, or Grand Forks, whichever one that is. Like, come on. Like, there's room. There's room. And I loved Arash with the twice failed XFL. That's the only way he would refer to it. I get it, but I don't think that it's gone under twice has particularly anything to do with what will come in 2022. Or whatever. I don't think the past performance indicates future performance in this particular case.
Completely agree. We're in a once in a lifetime situation, once in a generational situation, once in 100 years.
Yeah.
And you can't really say it's twice failed when you look at that. That's clear. So.
Well, and the sins of not even the father, but the sins of like the weird great uncle from the 1999 XFL. You're putting those on the son? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Just curious. I was listening to Rod this morning. You know, we're obviously going to be covering the spring league tonight. Are you watching any of that? Is that on your radar at all?
Not at all. Okay. No, as a football fan, I'm kind of super heavy on the CFL. I'm heavy on the NFL, and then I saw about 30 minutes of college football this year. So no, if there's some CFL player that I remember that shows up in the spring league, I may want to poke my head into some highlight. But no, I'm just super. I just go very deep on the CFL and try to go deep on the NFL as well.
Did you watch the XFL back in 2019, 2020?
I watched some of it, yeah, for sure, because it's football, right? Ultimately, it's football, and we have a CFL that's based on not being the very top level of football, and yet it's still awesome, right? So I did check in on some XFL, because the other part of it is there were CFL names that made their way down there, and you went, oh, I wonder if I'm going to see this guy. Will I see Derek Dennis? I love that guy. Oh, Grey Cup champion. I got to see Double D, and I ultimately didn't. But there was a curiosity. It wasn't around for long enough because March came and blew us all away.
Yep. In terms of all this, merger talk, or maybe Super League talk, or maybe interleague talk, what would you like to see the CFL keep around in terms of rules, in terms of those kinds of things?
I am one of the few in Canada who will say, whatever it is, the rouge has got to go. The single for the punt, that thing's got to go. I've always hated that. You miss a field goal, you blow it through the back of the end zone. Here's a loser point. No, I don't know. Nobody wants that. That one's got to go. What do I want to see? I'm not so attached to the rules that I played high school football with. I like them. I like the CFL is different. I like 3 downs. Waggling, sprinting full speed toward the line of scrimmage at the snap, to me is I don't know why the NFL doesn't do it. Can you imagine what some of their guys could do with the waggle from the slot? Just forget it. It could be uncoverable, and it could be 60-50, but then defenses would respond. So I'd love to see the waggle stick around, unlimited pre-snap motion, have that stick around. Other than that, I'm not so tied to 3 downs other than it promotes more passing. It's a 70% passing league in great part because of the 3 downs, right? You don't have time to waste a first down by running the football as often as you do in the NFL. So I wouldn't mind that one. I'm just not so tied to the rules as they are as the reason I love Canadian football. I love Canadian football, I don't know, because I love the game. I love football. I love that it happens in my hometown. I love that it happens in all these other towns that I love. I take what TSN's Farhan Lalji said on my show one day. He said, the Canadian football that I want to protect is football being played in Canada. Maybe it said the football that he loves is football played in Canada. And to me, it's just a chance for young people, young boys and girls, to play and experience football and have those great sports experiences I had. Whatever form it's like, I'm probably cool with that. I could be talked into wanting to join the protected side and keep this around, but honestly, I just want football played in Canada for me.
Have you been as shocked as I guess I have been, and I'll speak for Paul too, as we have been with just the divisiveness that has come from, I mean, it really has become like this Canadian culture, like conscious of like, well, no, this is, Paul and I were having a conversation with the gentleman last night online, and he's like, I am pro like Canada. It does not matter, right? Like we don't care. I mean, have you, and obviously, you host a radio show, you hear from people, you talk with, lots more people than we do. Have you been shocked just with how divisive it feels like it has gotten?
On protecting Canada, no, not really, right? Because so much of our broadcasting is set up on protecting Canada. I remember when I was a kid, I would be watching Thursday nights on NBC where Cheers and Night Court and then whatever stuff they would put before that. And I would think, why does a Canadian TV show this? This stuff is hilarious. And as you grow, you go like, oh, right, because American culture and American influence would absolutely overwhelm Canada. Population 10 times greater there's no end of American entertainment that would absolutely come in and just blow ours out of the water because we could get it cheaper. We could put it on TV for less price than creating stuff. And then that would absolutely stifle, Canadian entertainers. So I'm not surprised by that. We do need to protect the incredible talents that we do have here in Canada. And yes, they may leave to go to America at some point, but they need to be grown and fostered here. We need our kids to grow up believing that I could be the next Brent Butt of corner gas. I could be the next Nickelback. I could be whatever. We do need to protect that. So I'm not surprised that people are, protective of the CFL. We have great people who can do great things up here too if they're given the opportunity. But America can be so overwhelming. Sometimes our newscasts are, what happened in America today? What did Donald Trump do today? That was 4 years of Canadian newscasts. And there's not stuff happening in Canada. So it does. I believe it does need to be fought for sure.
On that note, when you talk about, kids getting involved with the game, we've both questioned the marketing tactics in the CFL and how to grow the game and keep the youth involved. What do you think they're doing wrong in terms of those marketing things to bring the youth in and have them watch?
That's such a good question because it's one that they've struggled with for the longest time, right? Like you can have the Sprite Zone where families can come and watch. You can have a section carved out for families, completely opposite the section where you can have it for the people who want to get just plastered because they're in their 20s. It's such a tough question. I think the thing is people believe the CFL hasn't been trying with stuff like this. Well, they had a flag football league. What happened to that? Well, it ran for a couple of years, and I honestly don't know the answer to that. It probably cost them money they didn't have to spend. Everything it costs money to do. And to another extent, I think when people say, if people have a problem with what the CFL is doing to attract young people, they miss what's being done on the team level. There are 9 teams that are actively reaching out to their provinces and their cities. The Saskatchewan Roughriders, they can't stop having guys come in and say, I want to go do some outreach. I want to go up north. I want to be running this camp in my hometown in Saskatoon. I want to be here. I want to be out talking to kids. I want to tell them my life lessons. I wanted to get them to love football. When we think of the CFL, I think we put it all on the league office in Toronto to be doing this stuff and that ignores the fact that here are 9 clubs, 9 independent businesses, semi-independent businesses that are out doing that stuff and reaching out to their community. Because it's great to have the CFL tagged onto it, but person to person is just so much better. And kids will probably forever tell stories of, oh man, I met the Riders long snapper Jorgen Hoos one day at my school in northern Saskatchewan, and it affects me greatly to this day, 30 years later. Like there are going to be those stories. So I think everybody could do more, but one of the big ones for me is this comes with a price attached to it. And to think about that now, outreach and growing the game for the very base roots and supporting football, it's going to be expensive. And frankly, I mean, there are other groups that do this stuff. To say it's not being done, to put it all in the CFL, one, I think is unfair to the CFL, and it certainly benefits them, but I think it's unfair to them. And two, I think it ignores the work of tens of thousands of other people in our country who are helping to grow football at the very base level.
You talk about that reaching out in the community kind of thing. Is that another reason? Do you think there's so much divisiveness? Because this seems like a very when it seems like all of these teams are owned by the fans, not necessarily on paper, but like they own the teams and they're a vital part of the community. Yeah. Is that another reason why you think the Canadians are so protective of this?
Oh, 100%. Like when I came here a couple of years ago to take the job doing Riders games, I knew what I was walking into, right? Like it's all green on Friday game nights and people are so excited. And I put out a call during one game later in the season, said, tell us where you're listening from. Boom, Australia, boom, Denmark, boom, every corner of the province, boom, every province in Canada. Wow, this Saskatchewan. The first and only time my wife and I ever went to Mexico. We were it wasn't the best resort, so I wouldn't recommend it going forward. But we're in Puerto Vallarta, and we go down to the pool the first morning. Boom, someone had planted a Saskatchewan Roughrider flag there. And we thought, Puerto Vallarta? Really? It reaches this far? They had their Saskatchewan Roughrider giant mugs for their all-day margaritas. There's a real reach and passion for it. And I think it's what they've known in a lot of cases. You hear a couple of the guys from the University of Regina who were drafted this year talk about, I grew up being a Rider fan. And now, 22, I'm going to the CFL. I've always been a Rider fan. He then got drafted by the Bombers, which I'm sure will cut at his core. But one of the things, and tell me what you guys think about this. I think that one of the main problems with the perception of this, it comes down to the very zero level of what condition do people think the CFL is in. I think you get people who are absolutely fighting like the XFL needs to bow to us. Oh no, the CFL is pooched. And it all comes back to what condition do they think the CFL is in? If you think the CFL is okay and can weather this pandemic and not having played for a season plus, I think you're on the side of, well, the XFL is going to need to really sell me on something. But if you are on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers posted a $7 million loss and teams might lose $60 to $80 million, according to Dan Ralph's report, you're on the side of, this has gotta happen. I think it's that base. None of us know what condition the CFL is truly in, and that leads us to a lot of these arguments and a lot of these fights.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we've always said, from the beginning that, the XFL is obviously struggling from a lack of lineage in history, right, that the CFL has. And I think when we had Rob Vanson on last week, I think I was saying, the XFL gets glossed over a lot with, The Rock's going to come in and save it, or look what Vince did, or look at all this stuff. At a fundamental level, the 2020 XFL was about, like you said, building those community ties, right? Doing fan events. I mean, we went to all the Seattle Dragons events and, met Jim Zorn and met the players and met, these things, when we picked our season tickets, you had the opportunity to go in, sit where your seat would be. These things that, I don't have the thousands of dollars to pay for like Seahawks season tickets, right? But I do have the $500 or whatever it was. I mean, we were front row 50-yard line for the games, right? But wow. it was that fan engagement, right, that I think is not dissimilar from what you're saying that the CFL is doing and what they need to do more of, right? I mean, I think both of these leagues, we look at 3 downs and we look at, Vince and he hate me and all this stuff, but what gets lost really is fundamentally a grassroots grown league on both sides that needs to be, do better at.
And I mean, everybody kind of understands that whatever version the CFL-XFL thing happens, or if the XFL ends up going it alone, one, you're going to build it from the ground up. You're going to go to the grassroots. You're going to do community outreach in these places. 2, you're going to have real ties to gambling, but that's a whole other deal. But yeah, you need to let people see that these are human beings. And sure, it's not the top level of football, but we accept the not top level of football so many times in our lives that this one shouldn't be particularly difficult. Okay, NCAA isn't the NFL. We still watch NCAA. CFL's not. I love the CFL. U Sports football, our college football, is not the CFL, which is not the NFL, but we still love our U Sports. I was a terrible high school football player. People came to watch that, even though it wasn't U Sports or the CFL or the NFL. We embrace the things that aren't the top level for different reasons, and I absolutely think there's room to go. And I mean, you guys are an example of that. Of like how many Seattle Seahawks games can you see for $500 from the 50-yard line? Like one quarter and then get the hell out. Like, come on.
Yeah. You talked about we don't really know what kind of trouble the CFL is in. To that point, if the CFL isn't in trouble, like some people believe it's not in trouble, they're putting the blinders on. Why even pick up that phone call from the XFL at that point?
That's exactly the point I made from day one on the Sports Cage. There were so many things on that very first day that I couldn't quite process and led me to, the CFL must be in real trouble. If you're not in real trouble, why are you talking to them at all? Why aren't you just plowing through it and going ahead on this alone? Why would you make an announcement to them? Why had you been talking to them for 8 months since the Rock and Company took this over? Why did TSN, the broadcaster here in Canada, the CFL, put out a statement on the day the CFL announced they were having discussions with the XFL. Why'd the XFL put off its season? There's so many things and so many pieces of circumstantial evidence that lead me to believe the CFL is in real financial, maybe not exactly dire straits, but like we mentioned Winnipeg. Winnipeg's one of the 3 publicly owned clubs that has put out its financial statement for the year. And they posted a $7 million loss, which was $7 million, but they didn't make a payment for their stadium either. So is it really more like 10.5? Plus they got government support. So whatever it is, they lost $7 million versus a less than $1 million profit the year before. That's a long time to dig out of that hole. That's a long time to dig out of that hole. So to me, I take all the circumstantial evidence, I look at it, I listen to the people that I've talked to, and I think the CFL is in real trouble. So I then am on the side of, they're talking to the XFL because they need help in a bad way. Whether that's exactly how it is, I don't know, but that's where the evidence that I see leads me to.
Yeah, that's kind of my point too. So, I had asked you, Spring League kicks off tonight. So Brian Woods is their CEO. He's been on the show to promote that. And, we had talked with him a couple weeks ago. Back in the last year, he had approached the CFL and said, hey, why don't you guys come down? You can play in the States. We can set up a bubble, all these things. And they said no. I've heard they laughed him off, variety of reasons, right? But the point was that last year, and not that Brian is nearly, or the Spring League is nearly the level of the XFL, but the Spring League helped the XFL develop their rule systems going into last year. I mean, they're big enough that there could have been some sort of ideal worked out, right? And the fact that the CFL said we don't need that last year and now answer the call this year, I mean, it is just something to keep in mind that there's a history of different entities reaching out with different results to the CFL, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think everybody could probably use, everybody that's not the NFL could probably use some help in this time, and you try to figure out, well, if you're the CFL, what can they do for me? What can I do for them? And then figure it out. I don't know if that's connected to, well, we want to focus on the XFL thing, or they didn't see value there, or it just was the wrong day. I'm not sure what that would have been, but yeah, the CFL is definitely looking for some ways forward. I think we can all infer from what's been happening.
Realistically, what's your I guess, what do you think is going to happen this season? How many games?
So the plan is to start August 5th and play 14 games. They've moved the Grey Cup back by 3 weeks. So to play essentially 14 games and 3 rounds of playoffs over a 19-week span. I think from a player perspective, they could do that. That's not out of line with what they've done. From a player health perspective, they could get that done. In Canada, where Ontario won't reopen until May 21st, to me, you kind of have to take August 5th and work back about 8 weeks and say, this is the day in which we have to say go or no go on August 5th. So I'm watching for very early in June, the CFL to go, yes, let's go, because guys will then pour across the border. Do they have to be vaccinated? I got to get my vaccine. I got to secure a place in Regina so I can work for the Riders. Boop, 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 boop. There's so much that has to happen. You got to fire up the marketing side. You got to fire up this side and the business. Let's go. Let's get our people in there. So I put those together. I think, well, in Saskatchewan here where the Riders play, you can't go visit your friends, right? You're supposed to keep to your own household. That's not great for going to see a football game with 8,000 people or however many they'll allow in. They've got the very first level of government support saying, yes, your plan for players to play players is great, but we still need to work on your plan for fans to come in. I'm struggling to think that August 5th is the day that which it will actually start. I don't have anything to back that up concrete. It's just a feeling that August 5th, it was a great day to put out there, but I don't think they're going to hit it. Honestly, I think it probably ends up being very early September. And if it's a half a season, 9 games plus the 3 playoff games that they've put out, I think 9 is probably more if I had to lay money, I'd probably say it's closer to 9 than 14.
We have a note in the show this week. They sent out the Players Association, send out another note, hey, we're still working through all this. I mean, are they just doing business as usual? Does that make you pause more when they're still saying like, hey, we don't know August 5th? Or does that kind of coincide with what you think?
I think it's probably in line with what the Players Association should be doing, right? When the CFL put out the date for August 5th, they said the CFL Players Association sent out a note that essentially said, don't quit your current jobs right now just because there's a date. That wasn't the exact wording, but that was the tenor of, hey, if you've got a job right now, you should probably hold on to that because there's still so much that is uncertain here. And you're spanning 6 provinces to play the game, each one which has their own different health regulations. I think the CFLPA doing that, I think is just prudent and the best thing for their players, as opposed to indicative necessarily of anything that they believe about August 5th.
I wanted to ask, it came out today, draft numbers down 20% from last year. Now, I know that last year was one of the highest that they had with, I believe last year was like 73,000 had watched a draft. That was the highest in many years. This year, it's down 20%. I think it's like 56,000 I have in my notes for today. What does that tell you that, here we are, we're getting ready. Obviously, the CFL is in the news more than it's ever been with the XFL talks and everything else, and the draft numbers are still down 20%.
I don't put a ton into CFL draft numbers because, one, they didn't play last year versus the NFL. I mean, the NFL's draft was, oh man, here's some superstars and this storyline about what's going to happen at number 3. I think the third pick was the most bet on draft pick ever, who was going to go number 3. And I saw someone put out online yesterday that it was more than it was gambled on the entire CFL all last year. Like number 3 pick, there was incredible drama about that horrible, terrible, idiotic Mac Jones rumor. Oh, they love Mac Jones. What are we doing here? Let's not pretend. So I don't take a ton from the CFL's draft numbers because they didn't play. And the thing is, it's where the CFL gets its Canadian kids from, but you get 0 quarterbacks from there. Your star players aren't coming from the CFL draft. The star players in the CFL, the sexy positions are generally are generally taken by Americans, right? So they're done through this system, their negotiation list system, which is very obscured and private. And we have our quarterbacks and we have our star receivers. It's interesting. I don't know if the CFL draft is ever going to be a really great big TV event because you're not getting superstars. I think people can't wait to see Jamar Chase back with his old college teammate in Cincinnati at number 5. Oh my God, this guy's going to kill it. I think there are a certain sect of people that go, oh man, that Jalen Phillips at 18 is going to absolutely murder some people if he's healthy. This is going to be phenomenal, right? They're so not to mention getting sunshine from Remember the Titans at number 1 turns Jacksonville on its ear, right? Like there's just so much immediate impact and immediate stardom. Trevor Lawrence has been a star for 3 years already, like almost A-level sports star for 3 years already. That's who the NFL has in its draft. Our draft of Canadians is not the same stardom. Jake Burt, who went number 1 overall to Hamilton out of Boston College, might turn out to be a phenomenal Hall of Fame level CFL player, but it just cannot possibly be as sexy as the NFL draft. So I don't take a ton from the year-to-year ratings of the CFL. I'm just happy to see super smart people talking about football on my TV again. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, because that's good to have your perspective, and obviously we'll talk with Connor too, because I see that and I'm alarmed, but that's why we bring on experts so we can ask about that. But I mean that, right? Because these narratives come about, and I don't know. I mean, the NFL had 12 million people watch the night 1 of the draft, so I mean, it is just something that obviously is alarming to us.
Well, just think about the picks that kind of turned the whole draft. Like everybody was waiting for number 3 in the NFL draft because we've been browbeaten with Mac Jones or Justin Fields or Mac Jones or Trey Lance at that number 3 pick. They're so great at creating the drama in that. And when you're in the Canadian draft, okay, we're filling our guard, center guard, our field wide receiver, defensive tackle, safety, and another position. The last time, like, who's the last defensive tackle that went number 1 overall in the NFL draft? Like, was it Dan Wilkinson back in the day? Like, it's been a long time because Sorry, last defensive tackle. Yeah. Sorry, Paul, I didn't hear you there.
I'm trying to think of the last defensive tackle to be taken overall number one.
It might have been Wilkinson way back in the 90s, right? It's just the priorities for, and maybe it's a fault of the Canadian game that we would dive into if we had a full hour or two, but Canadians get shoehorned into less sexy positions in the Canadian Football League. So the draft is set up to be not the viewing event that the NFL is, just by the nature of how Canadians are used in the Canadian Football League.
Yeah, which
technically it's Myles Garrett, 2017 for the Browns.
Well, he was a defensive end though, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right.
I'm trying to, but yeah, like defensive tackle isn't the sexiest position. Like if it wasn't for Aaron Donald or J.J. Watt when he played mostly more on the interior, we kind of like Vince Wilfork. If Vince Wilfork went number one in the draft, we would all had we'd have been just raging about that. Oh my God, I can't believe this guy's amazing, right? It's not as sexy as the skilled positions.
Those are all my bad.
I guess our last question for you today, because like I said, I feel like we could, this deep dive of why the Canadians not. I mean, this is like a whole can of worms. But here on the show, covering CFL in the world, all these things, all the XFL, everything. What do you want to see come from all of this ideal pie in the sky?
Pie in the sky. Honestly, if I had my druthers, I would love to see the CFL be able to continue as it is with 9 teams and the hope of a 10th team out on the East Coast in Halifax. I would love that to come back into reality because I think COVID has really probably set Halifax back quite a while. What government wants to help fund a stadium in this time. I'd love to see it be a 10-team all-Canadian CFL with at least its current commitment to Canadian players. You have to have 7 starting every game. I would love to see that continue. I would absolutely. My dream is to have it continue just the way it is, honestly, where we get these guys the NFL has looked past and they become stars in our league. And I'll tell my kids about Brian Burnham, even though Americans may well not remember Brian Burnham. He's an American player who I would step over my own mom to shake Brian Burnham's hand the way he plays the game. Right? That's what I want. I want Canadians. The Canadian running back Andrew Harris, who gets in there and makes me go, God, that guy didn't even go to university. He's one of us, and he's killing this league. This is fantastic. I want that. I want everything to stay exactly as it is, and the business people can figure out better how to improve things. That said, I don't think it can. But honestly, that would be my dream. I want every kid to grow up thinking, I could play in the CFL one day. I could play for this team in green. I could be a rider. I could be like Dan Clark. I could be the next Brendan Labatt. I would love that.
But then what do you think is going to happen then?
That's a real good question. I just believe there is some sort of mixture of CFL and XFL. I think it's coming. I don't know. I don't want to put the term merger on it or the XFL Pac-Man eats the CFL. I just think there's some sort of mixture where the CFL brings its 9 dedicated fan bases to an XFL, which brings, potentially attention and revenue that the CFL desperately needs. I think they put out a wager on Bodog. It was, will a CFL team play an XFL team in 2022? And I immediately took yes. I took yes because I just believe it's going to happen. I wish it didn't have to be this way, but money problems before the pandemic plus the pandemic equals a lot of options we didn't have to consider before. If you're trying to save your own life, how many of your limbs are you willing to hack off to save your own life? If you had gangrene pouring up your arms, well, they might be the chance they're the gangrenous body that they just got to go. Well, okay, that was nice, but I want our people, I want our Canadians. As the commissioner of the CFL, I want people to experience the game that I played and was drafted number 2 overall at. So I think the CFL looks drastically different if we talk a year from now.
Very good stuff. Derek Taylor, voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders and host of the Sports Cage. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We really appreciate it.
Connor O'Neill, CF Perspective, joining us now to talk about the CFL Draft. How's it going?
Not bad, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me back on.
I appreciate it. I told Connor offline, I said, we're never going to be, the draft analyst people. I think we need to know where our strengths and our weaknesses are. We are the Markcast. We're going to be talking about Young Rock on the show again today. So it's good to bring on someone that has expertise. So I watched a lot of your guys' stuff on Twitch on Tuesday with the coverage. I bounced around and watched a couple of different streams, but I said, Connor, we got to get you on and talk about the draft. So thank you so much.
Oh no, I appreciate you guys tuning in. That was it was fun to do. We figured, TSN kind of they cover the first 2 rounds usually every year. So we were like, you know what? Like, we study this thing like year round, as do those guys. No knock on them, but we're like, we study this thing year round. Why don't we take a crack at it and do something on Twitch ourselves? So that was a lot of fun, and it was fun to do. It was a fun night. A lot of surprises too.
Yeah, you said, I messaged you, you said wild night, wild, crazy draft. So takeaways, overarching first off before we dive in too much.
Yeah, it really didn't go as expected. Like last year too, it was kind of a little bit of more of a wild year too. I mean, a lot of the times you can usually say, okay, here's like kind of where we think the CFL draft is going to go. And a lot of times it does. But these past 2 years, I've just ripped up and burned my mock drafts. As soon as the picks come in, I'm just like, yeah, no, this one's going to be fun. So I'll do it on the fly. But it was fun. There was a lot of unexpectancies, I should say.
So I have here, obviously Jake Burt goes first. Were you anticipating that to Hamilton? And what was kind of the reaction to that? I mean, does the prestige of like the number 1 CFL draft pick, does that carry weight like in the NFL where you're like, oh, Trevor Lawrence, number 1, like that's going to be huge?
It does, but the funny thing before I get into Jake Burt, the funny thing with the CFL draft, it's a lot of the time teams are drafting for futures, and more so than ever this year too, because we didn't get a CFL season. So we still have a 2020 class coming in as well. Now on top of that, we have 2019 class, 2020, now coming into 2020, 2021. So we've got 2 rookie classes going into a rookie camp. And a lot of these guys do too have the option to go back. Even the American guys, we saw guys like Deshaun Stevens out of Maine. He got drafted high, but he's transferring. So he's going to go back and put another year down on tape. The CFL draft, more so than the NFL draft, is about securing these guys for futures and special teams a lot. These are where these guys are going to crack rosters, is special teams. Now, the exception is Jake Burt here. I didn't see him going number 1. I think people did as the draft started to close in, but I was really pat down on Hamilton getting a defensive lineman. But the pick here for Jake Burt, I mean, I get what they're doing. Jake Burt has been in an NFL camp. He's huge. He's 6'3", 260. And he's going to be a guy that's going to come into Hamilton and play now. He is breaking the rule, he's the exception to the rule of drafting the future. Hamilton went out and said, yeah, we're going to draft a guy that's going to play right now. But they do have a guy like Nikola Kalinic, who's a similar role to Jake Burt. So that was kind of head scratching, but Jake Burt, like when you watch him on tape, he's undeniable. I think he's going to contribute right away, especially in some heavy packages and things of that nature. And the cool thing about Jake Burt too, is he is the first ever listed tight end to be drafted number 1 overall in the CFL draft. So he's the first time a tight end has gone 1.
Interesting. Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
What first things first up, do you think overall that people addressed the needs that they had?
Yeah, I think a lot of these teams did. Ottawa, they did sort of. They had a really good first half, kind of fell apart in the back half, but there was a lot of teams. Like this was a year where you look at the draft and you're like, teams had 2 years now to evaluate tape on these guys, especially for U Sports guys I'm speaking of. But so they had 2 years to study these guys' tape. Then they go in and they get there's some very good NCAA talent drafted as well. So I think between the U Sports talent and kind of the CFL draft is really regionalized. So you see a lot of Montreal guys going to Montreal. They addressed their needs there. But yeah, a lot of these teams did whatever they needed, whether it be linebackers, DBs, offensive linemen. They kind of fell to the teams that they needed to.
Are there teams that you are more excited about now, having gone through Tuesday night? Specifically, how is Edmonton looking now, as I have a vested interest?
I wrote down 2 teams that I really loved their draft. Edmonton was one of them. I loved Edmonton's draft right off the hop. It was a surprise pick. Wade, myself, my co-host on CFP, we had this guy nailed. Like, we thought he was going to go high. We just didn't think he was going to go first round high. But when you look at this guy, he's a 6'5" offensive or 6'5" defensive lineman, 312, ran a 4.9 40 at 6'5", 312. He tested off the charts, and Edmonton has 2 really, really good defensive ends in Kwaku Boateng and Matthew Betts. And Cole Nelson is going to be this guy that's going to come in and play. We call it 3-tech here, be your nose tackle down there. He's going to come in and play nose tackle, D tackle, and he's really going to, eat some double teams, triple teams, and free up these really good edge rushers that Edmonton has. So I think Edmonton with Cole Nelson. I think Cole Nelson, depending on whether he wants to go back to Alberta or whether he wants to kind of make a run out of CFL camp this year, I think he could be an impact player. I don't know if we'll see it, but I certainly love Cole Nelson's game and what he's going to do for the future of the edge guys in Edmonton. They went with a linebacker in Grant McDonald, 6'3" linebacker, ran a 4.5 40, speed, and a phenomenal linebacker at the Calgary University program, who just won the Canadian National Championship in 2019. Deontay Glover, a running back in the 3rd round out of Shepherd, D2 program. He had like over 2,000 yards on the season. So phenomenal product in him. Peter Cordes, big offensive lineman, 6'5", 300-pounder. Another nice addition there on the line. And then Keenan Clark, a DB out of Cornell, who had a couple interceptions, and he's pretty speedy as well. So I loved Edmonton's draft.
And what was the second team that you had written down there?
I'm staying in the West. It was the BC Lions. So they went with defensive lineman right away. I really thought they were going to go get a guy like Ben Hladek, who was a linebacker from UBC, 6'4" linebacker, 29 rep bench. He had a 4.17 shuttle, so his lateral movement is insane. But I think teams are a little bit, when you hear big linebacker, it's like, how does he move? Just watch his tape. He moves just fine. I think it was a steal at 322 for him. But Daniel Joseph in the 1st round, an NC State edge rusher, who I believe he is going back. But again, he's going to go back and play Division I football. He's going to develop a lot more, and then he's going to be able to step in and make an impact in BC. Alaric Jackson, the 4-year starter out of Iowa, they picked him up in the 2nd round. I wasn't as high on him as everybody else, but he went in the 2nd round for a reason. He's huge. He moves well. Alfred Green, a defensive lineman from Laurier. Laurier defensive linemen just translate to the CFL. They just do. I don't know why. They have a damn good defensive lineman coach down there, and great program. So Kwaku Boateng, the edge rusher for Edmonton, actually is a Laurier grad. And then they rounded it out with Tyler Packer from Calgary, 6'6", 315 offensive lineman. So size to protect Mike Riley, who was one of the most hit quarterbacks in the CFL in 2019. So they needed to address that, and they did, plus getting some defensive help too.
How do they balance it? And we're, coming into all this and especially with the COVID year, and we have 2 years now, and you feel like it's like a backup of all this talent, right? And then some can go back to the States, and some are playing now. And then some, I was trying to make sense. TSN had Farhan on, and he was talking about how, like you were saying, some of the players, they're stashing them for later. Some of them, they're going to just hang. I mean, how do you balance? It just seems like it's a lot more, NFL, like Trevor Lawrence is starting, September, whatever. How do you balance that? And how do fans work through that?
It's tough. A lot of these guys are going to go back. You're right. With the NFL, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, they're going. Those are your starting quarterbacks. And then when you get these guys drafted in the CFL, a guy like Cole Nelson, he might go back. A guy like Daniel Joseph, he's definitely going back. So you're not going to see these guys necessarily right away. There are going to be some oddities. I mean, guys show up in camp and they just ball. And that's end of story. There was a guy out of Western University here in Ontario. They're one of the premier programs in Canada. Fraser Stopik, he was one of the top defensive players coming out of Canada, went high in the CFL draft, had a heck of a camp, and he stuck around on specials. So, if fans that really follow the CFL draft and really love the CFL draft, Fraser Sopik cracks a roster and they see that and they love that. But the average fan, right, like, it doesn't matter what league you're in, whether it's, U Sports, NCAA, CFL, XFL, NFL, Spring League, how often do you pay attention to a teamer? It's not often. But for these guys, special teams is the way to crack a roster. So maybe not right now, first 2-3 years, he's not a known player because he's just playing gunner on punt. But you get a guy who then cracks the roster, works his way in, whether it be through play or through injuries. Circumstances happen, like Enoch Mwamba, who is in Montreal and now in Toronto, stuck around, cracked the team through special teams. They kind of had a need at linebacker. He filled it. All of a sudden, he's a Canadian starter on your team, and he's one of the most recognizable players in Montreal. So it takes longer for these guys to develop. And, I think Canadian fans recognize that a little bit because guys do go back and they have to develop. And then it takes them a little bit to develop when they're in the CFL because there's so much, because we can then go pull from the American talent pool, right? So those guys often, like a Jake Burt, if he didn't get drafted, he was getting signed and played right away. So he steps in and he takes over a role and, fans know him from day one. So it's a little bit tougher, but I think fans realize it here.
So you've broken down two teams. Who is kind of those last players picked that you think will have the biggest impact? Maybe one or two, like a Tom Brady type. I'm not saying that you're the CFL's version of Tom Brady, but one of those late picks, sixth round, that you think is going to make waves.
Okay, so you want late, and I'm going to go really late. How about the last pick in the CFL draft? I'm going with the last guy off the board, Miles Manilow, a linebacker from the University of Western. I'm going to bring them up again. I know they're Canada's favorite team to hate on, but they just put pros into the league. They're like the Alabama up here every year. It's like, oh yeah, they won their conference. Oh yeah, they're going to the national championship. So they're a pretty good program. But Miles Manilow was a linebacker there, 6'2", 230-pound linebacker. And we actually found this guy's tape evaluating an offensive lineman's tape. So Bryce Bell, the 11th pick in the CFL draft, Laurier offensive lineman, big guy. We found Miles Manilow because he was coming on a B-gap blitz. Bryce Bell kind of met him in the hole, and Miles Manilow blew Bryce Bell up, drove him back, got to the quarterback, made the play, and we kind of were sitting there going, oh, who's this guy? And then we started watching his tape more and more and more. And Miles Manilow, like a Fraser Sopik, I think he has that special teams ability, the special teams size. Defensive players, they just love to run downfield and hit people, and that's what special teams is, right? Like kickoff in the CFL, you got to run it out or you're giving up the 1 point. So, hey, Miles, go run downfield and hit that guy as hard as you can. Just get hot to ball. So,
did you track any of the Canadian players that were in the NFL draft from last week?
I did, yeah. So Javon Holland, I'm gonna admit this on air. I'm a Detroit Lions fan. Oh, wow. And so sitting in the second round, I'm sitting there going, hey, Detroit's a DB needy team. Javon Holland's still on the board. He's coming up. DB out of Oregon. Unfortunately, he goes to Miami. Not unfortunately for him. I'd rather play in Miami than Detroit, no questions. So Javon Holland, he went high, and I think he's going to make a difference. Another DB, Benjamin St. Just, the Montreal native out of Minnesota. He went, believe he went in the third or fourth round as well.
Third at 74. Palmer. I have my notes here that we're going to talk. Yeah, you're right.
Third round. And then a guy like Josh Palmer, another playmaker. So, there was a lot of, I think there was, including UDFA signings, I believe there was eight Canadians signed or drafted to NFL teams this year, which is awesome to see. And Javon Holland was the highest Canadian drafted in, I believe, Canadian draft history. So that was awesome to see as well.
Yeah, I think Detroit. I think they're working on something this year. I believe in Dan Campbell. I watch a lot of Good Morning Football, and they were talking about their line that they drafted, and all these guys are like 300 pounds, and they said they're definitely building a culture down there that I think is going to be good.
I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I say this every year, and I get disappointed every year. But I think this is the first year I can actually say I'm excited to watch some Detroit Lions football.
So now, we're through the CFL draft. We're getting, August 5th. Are we in a waiting game now till June to kind of figure out what happens with training camps and things, or what are you guys working on in the meantime?
I think so. I think we're just kind of waiting for a start date at this point. I mean, the draft going forth, to me, it indicates that they're doing everything they can behind the scenes to get something going. As far as I've heard, they're trying to push for a start date. I believe maybe August. Training camp's probably end of July is what I don't know that, but that's just kind of what I would expect based on the arc of where it's going right now. But there was the message from the commissioner. We are going to have a season. I know he said a lot of things, but I think he's working hard. He wants to see football just as much as, the fans do, I believe, at this point, whether it's, for financial reasons or getting players on the field, but we want to see some football up here. He recognizes that, but, camps, the draft indicates to me camps are going to happen. Guys keep signing, which indicates to me it's going to happen. I mean, Toronto just went out and signed their second overall pick yesterday, I should say. Dejon Brissett, the wide receiver out of Virginia, he got drafted high last year. They signed him this week, so they're not signing him for no reason.
What realistically, what do you think? What do you think we're looking at total games wise? Is it going to be the 13, 14, 15, or maybe a 9?
I think they're going to do, 13. I don't know. It's tough to say. 13, 14, 15 is what I want to say. Really, though, I mean, a December Grey Cup is not that unrealistic. I mean, we play well into November anyways. It's a couple weeks later. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit colder, but still, Hamilton is not, like, relative to some of the other cities in Ontario. Like, you're not playing north in Montreal. You're not playing north in Ottawa. I mean, it snowed in November. It's going to snow in December. It's relatively the same weather, I would say. I mean, BC would obviously be the, they'd be the ideal choice because they have the dome out there, but Hamilton won the bid. It's going to be hosted in Hamilton. I think we're going to see a December Grey Cup.
I thought I saw someone just tweet about that it just snowed. There was a dusting of snow somewhere in April or in May. And I was like, okay, see, then we're not going to win. I mean, we're not gonna, because we're talking February XFL. I'm like, okay, well, if it's snowing in May, we're never going to win anything. So, like, we just, at some point, you got to put a jacket on, I guess. I don't know. I lose patience at that point.
Unfortunately, I was part of that snow. That was in Eastern Ontario. It was out Ottawa way. So I got hit hard with that. That was awesome.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, was that just this week it snowed?
It was the past weekend, weekend, just like the weekend of the NFL draft. I was watching the NFL draft and it was snowing. I was like, this is fitting in Canada.
And it's May. Wow.
Yeah.
Connor O'Neill, CF Perspective. Thanks for joining us talking about the CFL draft. We'll look to have you on hopefully as the season draws closer.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It's a lot of fun. Love talking with you guys. So
we really, we appreciate the experts and expertise and analysis. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Stay safe. And we're back. We have some XFL news to report now that we are just the Markcast.
We're just the Markcast, just covering the other football leagues. I still, Paul, my AirPods Max, I didn't charge them overnight, so I just got the dingle that they are low on battery. So if at some point in the show I just can't hear you, we'll have to figure out a solution. So anyway, this came out in a different world. Maybe this would lead the show. Naylor was on. I don't know why he's on everything now. I love Dave Naylor, but he was talking about the committees. Basically, there's different committees coming together. He feels and has heard involving the CFL and XFL, including Dwayne, looking at different areas, trying to study the business and see what benefits there are. How this is going to affect everything. The long story short is he's really not thinking until 2023. Mike Mitchell has talked about that. Naylor says, based on my conversations, I think there's a strong likelihood if they were to come together, we're talking about 2023, just looking at where we are on the calendar. What do you think?
Completely agree. I mean, this is just like, I think like we've all suspected that there's been long talks going on, and we do have some inside sources now that are plugged into the Canadian side of things that have told both us things off the record that, that this XFL thing, kicking off in 2023 makes sense when you really think about it. So I think we're just waiting to see what happens with the CFL season and see how it plays out, and then how potentially the XFL builds a partnership there. I think it's inevitable.
I will say, and I'm actually, we didn't. This isn't on the show, but I play devil's advocate for Mark Perry this week. Mark on his podcast now, We Can Review XFL News has gone back, and I've always heard and believe it's one league, one rule book. I don't know what any of that looks like, but that's what I believe. Mark has backtracked now, and he thinks that it's that they're going to work on business, like, oh, they're going to swap business ideas. I go, Mark, what does that mean? I get everyone, and it's not just Mark. Like, I get a lot of people like, okay, well, they're just going to work on business stuff. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that looks like. The CFL is 9, a mixed mash of all these teams, some owners, some public. Like, what does that mean? The XFL is going to help the CFL with business. Is it money? Then it's a merger. If it's not, then it's not. But there's no like, we're going to give them our social media analytics and help them figure out their like Google ads. Like, that's not, what does that mean?
You're not getting anything for free, CFL. Like, you're not.
But even if you did, what does that look like? What does that, it's like, define what help with business means. I'm just so frustrated. And it wasn't just with Mark. I'm like, I hear that a lot. Like, well, they're just going to help business. I don't know what that means.
Be specific. That's what you want. You want a deeper contextual meaning in what business really means. Is it marketing? Is it,
Yeah, I don't know what that looks like. I mean, yeah, okay, you have The Rock retweet it. I mean, I just don't know. We would not have gone from October till now if they are not merging and doing something. I mean, like, this is just crazy talk now. They wouldn't put the XFL, they wouldn't do all this stuff just to like have The Rock come on and do some commercials or what, any other machinations you can think of. Like, I mean, I don't think
they took the XFL's call. That's all you need to know.
So that's just where I'm at. Anyway, I played devil's advocate with Mark. I was like, Mark says he's going to talk about it next week on the show. I said, I want to know. I hear business. They're going to help with business. What does that mean?
Speaking of a business,
I tried to help them, Paul. We tried to get them on the show, and now we know why.
Yep. Apparently, Doug Flutie's Maximum Football, the only Canadian football game, has ceased operations. David Winter, the founder of the company, said as of this time, and as many have guessed, development of the title has been suspended, and the company itself has been put on hiatus. Unfortunate. Very unfortunate. I can't download it anymore, I assume.
No, but they also said that the studio and the IP is being offered up for sale. So would you like to invest in Doug Flutie? Maybe we could, that could be our next venture. It could be a Canadian video game.
Possibly.
Something to think about. I tried to get them on the show. I wanted to get Doug Flutie on the show.
I would love to have Doug Flutie on the show.
There you go.
Another Boston College kid that went to the CFL to play, like Mr. What's his name? Jake Burt.
Yep. Here is some. Now, okay, we're past all this stuff. This is kind of insidery stuff now. Listener Max put a lot of this together. We have a lot of different Redbirdy things. So we're talking about like, what can XFL bring? It's not just the XFL, it's Redbird. So, and this will affect you because you're in New York. I know you don't like the Mets, but the former owners of the York Mets are exploring the sale of SYN, which is the team's regional sports network.
SNY. Not SYN.
I'm dyslexic. And so Steve Cohen, who owns the team now, right? Okay. He is looking at potentially selling this to the Yes Network. That includes Sinclair and Redbird Capital. What do you think about Redbird buying into the New York Mets, expanding their reach that way?
That's interesting because, Redbird's tied up with the Fenway Group too. So that's an interesting thing. And I think what he's doing, Cohen is not necessarily, the Yes Network is not necessarily going to maybe buy SNY, but maybe consult Cohen on how to make it all happen. Yes Network, of course, is the home of the New York Yankees, the 27-time world champion franchise, the dynasty, the gold standard for all baseball teams, the only team that should be wearing pinstripes. So yeah, I know I'm going there. So yeah, I think it makes sense that Cohen owns SNY as well as the Mets, just like the Wilpons did, because SNY has been is always very pro Mets. It's never it's very homerish in that sense. It very much drafts that way. Sometimes every once in a while you'll see SNY defend some stuff that the Yankees get accused of, like the cheating thing. Andy Martino's been a big defender of the Yankees and the letter that apparently is coming out. Anyway, long story short, I think this just makes sense that Cohen does buy SNY and keeps it a Mets type of station.
But he's talking with Redbird, and Redbird, they own part of the Red Sox network too, right? I mean, that's part of their Fenway thing, but they own NESN. How many of these like regional baseball, like isn't baseball struggling for like viewers? Why do we have all these little networks? Like,
no. Despite what you might have heard on
Mark's
podcast, baseball's not hurting at all. Like people do still care about, I'm very much a baseball guy. Like people still do care about baseball. And this makes sense. Like for example, the announcement that came that NBC Sports Network was shutting down. That was the national sports network. There are still plenty of regional sports networks that are still going on. Our friend Kassim, Kassim, yep. He works for NBC Sports Network just in the Bay Area.
Yeah, in the Bay Area.
And they are still going strong, covering the Oakland Athletics. So I think the regional sports model, that's it was a smart thing for Sinclair to buy up when the Fox merger happened with Disney.
Well, another thing, this is listener Max, LeBron James, who is involved with Redbird in the Fenway Group, he is investing in a Spanish soccer team. They're already involved with Liverpool and French club Toulouse, and now he is going with the shares of Malaga CF.
Okay.
Do you know Malaga CF?
I don't.
Well, they are apparently used to be like the premier special. Is that during the past few years, the team was managed by club president Jose Munez. During this time, he made all sorts of efforts to get the team back kind of into the mainstream, but they have been, I guess they used to be more premier and now they have kind of gone down. And the idea is that potentially the theory would be is that LeBron and Redbird may be buying in to kind of bolster. Similarly, looking at the CFL, some things that maybe could have gone better. But it is interesting that they're involved. Yeah, I know there was the whole Super League thing came out and they were with Liverpool. I mean, do you have any thoughts about LeBron, Redbird, Fenway kind of continuing to expand their growth?
I think what's happening is you're seeing a lot of like soccer clubs, their supporters pushing back against these big owners coming in and taking over their clubs, especially I think it was Man City or I think it was Man City this last week. The supporters got really up in arms and protested and stuff like that. So I don't know if this is a good thing, but it's going to be interesting to see. And Redbird Capital, I mean, they have their hands in Liverpool as well. So it's just big companies, big corporations seeing a chance to hop on these things and buy them up.
Yeah, it says Spanish. The media has been set ablaze by this. They're looking at it's a very jocular tone, but excited. So anyway, so I just thought that was interesting. Last little bit here from Redbird. Danny Garcia launched a new women's lifestyle collection. What I wanted to talk about this. This is great, and they're trying to impassion women, and I think it's like upscale workout wear, whatever. My takeaway was, wait, so Danny Garcia never owned a women's fashion line before, right? I mean, but this is certainly something that with money and expertise, and you can bring in professionals and help you do that.
No, according to some people, she's just going to fail. I don't know why she does this. Some people in Canada think she's just going to fail.
Yeah. Anyway, this is just adding to her portfolio. She's the owner of the XFL, Voss, Terramana Tequila, Salt and Straw, Project Rock, Zoa. I mean, these are smart business people, and this idea of like, well, what does The Rock or Danny know about running the sports league? They're going to hire someone. That's a dummy statement.
Everything they touch turns to gold.
Yeah.
If you would have told me at the end of season 1 we were going to get a season 2 of Young Rock, I would have laughed. I didn't think that that they would have the kind of viewers they've had, and they proved me wrong once again. So maybe we should start talking about it here on the Markcast. I don't know.
We'll talk about just a couple last notes. Panthers with PJ Walker, they have picked up Darnold's 5th-year option, so they are sticking with Darnold. I know we went through the draft and we traded Bridgewater. I hope that PJ could just be the backup there and make a couple million a year, and I think that sounds fine. Washington, this was kind of wide receiver Jeff Badette. He was with the Washington football team. They cut him. He was formerly with the Renegades. I think that's going to happen a lot right now that we have the new class and the new draft guys and the new whatever. That I think you're going to, and that was like Teamu was with the Chiefs, and then he was with the Lions, and then he was back with the Chiefs. I mean, that's going to happen a lot right now. A lot of XFL guys. And then you want to talk about Scott Daly. Scott
Daly, former XFL long snapper. What team was he with?
Oh,
he didn't include that there. Scott Daly, long snapper, which is a very, very, very particular skill position, signed to a contract from the Detroit Lions. So Connor might be happy about that. Connor O'Neill.
New York Guardians.
Okay.
So the Guardians, as Mark would say, the Guardians. The Guardians.
So maybe Connor might be happy about that, because the long snapper is a very precise position. So good luck to Scott. All right. So let's take another break. Go to commercials. Listen to these people. Come back. We'll talk about the Spring League as much as we can right here on the Markcast. And we're back.
You'll be happy to know this is the first week we don't have any Fangraphs football news.
Right.
Someone tweeted a photo of like the team back together, and it was like Patrick D sitting on the couch and a couple other people. But you'll be happy to know I do continue to post, though. There's been a lot of Fangraphs football guys, DeAndre Francois among them, that are going to the Spring League. And every time that they post online, I share Sarab's tweet where he calls the Spring League now the real league.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, here's the deal. A lot of these players are going between all the leagues. Like, that's why there's no good to for Sarab to crap on Spring League. Brian was jokingly crapping on Fangraphs football, but I don't think it was like a serious, jab. I think you need to be all these leagues because these players are going between all of them. I mean, look, Matt Mangle, Spring League, went to the CFL. XFL guys are now going. I mean, this is like a cesspool isn't the right word, but
cattiness is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So Eric Dungy pulling out of Spring League. He's been invited to the Bengals mini camp.
This just came out today. Yeah, just came out this morning. Spring League came out, wished him well. He was going to be one of the QBs. We already talked about the lack of coverage. They tweeted the rosters. We kind of did all that stuff. Spring League announced the announcers, and it's a lot of guys. Brock Heward is back. Joel Klatt is back. It's a lot of people that did XFL stuff. So people are excited about that. Do any of those names strike you? They don't.
Petros.
Brock Heward. I mean, that's exciting. I mean, we know Brock, and he was definitely with the Dragons and stuff, covering that. Not a lot. I mean, here's the deal. It hasn't been a lot coming out about the Spring League. Hasn't been a lot of, like I said, just like, I would do anything for one of these leagues. I own the video production company, and hire somebody to one guy or a girl and a videographer and go and you could do 18 videos a day and just get the guys at camp and get them after camp. And I will say Fangraphs football really did a good job. It didn't translate to the viewers, with the 50,000, per game, but they really did a good job. And I give them all the credit in the world now, seeing how the Spring League has followed up where it is wide open right now. There's no CFL, there's no fan control, there's no anything. Spring League kicks off tonight. And I think it could not be colder right now if they had tried.
They should have done something. They should have come on. So at least someone, even if it was Brian again, I don't care. Someone.
Yeah,
anybody.
I don't care. I gave him a good guys. I had a good wish list. I had it all planned out. We had the whole show going, and then they didn't want to do it. So the games tonight, as we record, the Alphas were playing, the Aviators, Conquerors, and Linemen. There's a game tonight. As you listen to this, the Sea Lions are playing the Blues at 9:30 Eastern on FS1, and then Saturday is going to be the big one with the Generals and the Jousters. Noon.
We're going to play a game. The Jousters are Gonna play a game.
This is the time. The Jousters are playing. Anyway, so the games are kind of weird. I was looking on their website. There's like a Monday game listed. I don't. XFL News Hub did a good job of listing all the games, but I don't. I would just check I'm on YouTube TV, and you can just subscribe to the Spring League, and they're all on there. That would be how I would best do that.
All right, with the Spring League being talked about right now, it's time to open that box and exactly see what happened here.
All right. What do you think? Are you nervous, Paul?
A little bit, but
I'm nervous.
I think it's going to be on brand no matter what.
I'm really nervous. There was a tab. Where'd the tab go? Where the hell? There was a.
By the way,
right here.
You got another thing coming. By the way, I just sent you the information on that. So we'll talk about that next week.
Okay. Here we go. If you're listening to this, make sure to check out the YouTube.
Natural sound.
All right. Here we go, Paul. I'm nervous. I'm really nervous.
I kind of want to.
Oh, we're not going to be happy. We're so not going to be happy. No, we're not going to be happy. No. Well, we might. Well, some of our listeners might be happy though. No. Well, Paul, I tell you, we got no jerseys. We got 2 t-shirts.
What sizes are the t-shirts?
We have a large and I assume a large, probably 2 largest.
So one of them would be big on you and one of them would be small on me.
I mean, they're jouster. All I wanted was a jersey. That's all I wanted for 9 months.
Okay. Are we giving those things away then? I think we were.
Can we see them? Can you see them?
No, you've got them like backwards. Not the white one's fine. The dark one's not fine. It's yep. There we go. Guys, just give us your designs and we'll put them up on the Markcast website and you can make some revenue that way. I don't know.
I'm so disappointed.
Can we just include those in the giveaway?
We'll figure out a good giveaway for those. We have some Spring League. If you want, I don't want a t-shirt. So if you guys want the Jousters merch, we'll figure it out. So tweet me some ideas at the Markcast on Twitter, or you can email us. We have a new email, the markcastpodcast@gmail.com. So you can email in, give me some ideas. Let's do a giveaway. We got to get some subscribers up. So figure that out. Super disappointed.
Here's what we'll do then. Let's get the subscriber count up to 1,500. We're 250 away.
Okay.
Let's get it to 1,500. We'll give those 2 shirts away to someone.
I like that.
Do that. With that being said, we thank you for listening again.
What a piss poor way to end this show. I knew the second I felt that box, I go, this is not good. This is not good. I knew it wasn't.
You really wanted the jersey. I know.
How hard? It's like, Brian,
I thought he was going to send a helmet too.
I don't even care. I'm like, Brian, you took the time to mail the thing. You took the time to mail the package and you couldn't send a jersey? I'm stunned. Like, why don't send it?
I have no idea. Wild.
Crazy ending. Twist ending. Didn't see that coming.
All right. Want to thank everybody for listening. Hopefully this end of the show doesn't dissuade you from listening next week. And hopefully next week we'll have someone to come on and talk about the Spring League. Cross our fingers. We'll see. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next week.
I'm dead to me.
No, I feel like a robot talking right now. And I don't know how to end this episode. So we're just going to end it right now.
See ya.
See ya.